Thank you all so much for joining us and for having us here today. We're going to start by sharing a quick overview of the case studies and some of the work we've done over the last few months before beginning our conversation with Maria Barbara.
Thanks, Sacha. And we just want to say that if you leave here today with only one message, it should be this one. Cybersecurity needs to be a shared responsibility. It requires attention across the whole organization and cannot be borne on the shoulders of IT staff.
And so we approached the cases over the last 5 months by conducting 9 interviews and supporting desk research with 4 international civil society organizations. And as Eva mentioned, we're really grateful to them for sharing their stories with us. All the case study partners were identified by the International Civil Society Centre and the CyberPeace Institute.
So here are the 4 new case studies that the ICSC are launching today. So kind of why we're here. And you should be able to do a deep dive into them after the meeting or maybe a couple of days afterwards. This collection of 4 cases represents a snapshot of several different cybersecurity incidents. First, a phishing attack that hijacked an organization's social media account. And then there was also a spear phishing attack that targeted employees' email accounts over a 6-week period. There was also another case that was a brute force attack that featured a high volume of attempted logins into the organization's accounts. And lastly, there's a case of a ransomware attack in which the attackers exploited a server vulnerability to hold the organization's data hostage.
And now we're delighted to be joined by Maria Barbara, who is the Chief Operating Officer for the Union for International Cancer Control, to discuss the cybersecurity incident which her organization experienced. In the summer of 2021, UICC's Instagram account for International Cancer Day was hijacked. Would you be able to tell us briefly, what happened, and just sort of share the story with us?
Sure. Thank you, Sacha, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for the organizer for inviting us. So I'm Maria Barbara León. I'm Chief Operating Officer at the Union for International Cancer Control. And our organization is a member organization. I guess many of you are familiar with how we work. We have members around the world that we work with them, for them, and representing them. UICC has 1,200 member organizations around the world, and there are organizations working on cancer, but it covers the whole aspect of cancer control, which goes from prevention all the way through research, treatment, access to care, patient support, etc., etc. So there are all kind of organizations. We have the big cancer organizations as members, but we also have some small patient groups around the world. Our work is focused on organizing events for members, and with members also having a set of programs in different areas. And then a lot of activities are also around advocacy in pushing or advocating for cancer to continue to be a priority on the health global agenda. So we're based in Geneva, and we work with all the UN equivalent organizations and with different international organizations. So what our main business is to work, as I mentioned, with the members. So is business to business. So we're in contact with our counterparts that are other cancer organizations, and that's the most of our activities where we are concentrated. However, we have one product, we call it product, that is basically an event, the World Cancer Day. It's on the 4th of February. And that particular event, we aim at getting everybody together on that day to mark the occasion and to mark the Cancer Day, World Cancer Day. And our approach has been involving members, but also involving the public. And then is one of the few activities that we involve the public directly. So, because as I say, otherwise we go through the member organizations. So for the last 10 years or so, the World Cancer Day activities have grown, and the World Cancer Day support has also grown. And as in around the world, the social media activity has also grown. And as also the world has changed, and in 2021, when this happened, we were coming from after the pandemic. We were doing a lot of activities remotely. We were doing a lot of things, working from home also. We were online a lot more than usual. So there was, and this I imagine happened to all of us. So we were seeing a lot of remote and cyber activity in UICC. So in the summer in 2021, we had this case, and I'll tell you a little bit. You will have the opportunity to read it, but I will tell you a little bit. I'll summarize what happened. So I'm Chief Operating Officer, so usually I have the problems that come to my desk and I have to solve them. So I got on a call. I was at home. I got a call from my colleagues, and they're like, is there a problem with the internet? They're like, not that I know, but it happens, as you know, it happens everywhere, the internet connections. So we checked, there was nothing. And she told me, yes, that I can't access my account, but nothing more. So it was a Friday afternoon, like the big problems always happen on Friday afternoon. And then we went on the weekend. On Monday, during our managers meeting, my colleagues from communications, we have a managers meeting on Monday morning, and said, yeah, we have a problem. The Instagram account had a problem. And I go, okay, well, yeah, the internet connection, yes, yeah, I'm aware. But anyway, so it happened to be that our social media manager was contacted by Instagram, and in a very realistic way, because it had the logo, it had the same colors, the same font, and it was contacted, and she was asked to provide more information about a use of a picture, which it happens to us. I imagine to many of you, if you're in the programs or in the communications, we sometimes have, have to make sure that we reference the pictures and we have the copyrights and all those things. So that's how it happened. They asked her for information for this specific image, and then on top of it, the different information on the account, which she did provide because she thought it was Instagram contacting her from the US. And then she provided all the information, and then to make the long story short, we had the account hijacked and we couldn't access it, and we were talking about 20,000 followers. And that's basically, as I explained, it was the public. It is one of our products that it's public facing. So we obviously got into a panic because we didn't know. And then it happened to be that they contacted us. They contacted the social media manager who had the phone, that she provided the phone numbers. So they contacted her through Instagram, and then they asked if we wanted the account back. We had to pay $10,000. So we got into a panic because we have received, and I think we all have received those emails that they tell us that someone has inherited $10 million and they want to give us a piece of the inheritance that we just ignore. But in this case, it tricked us. So it was very, we fell into the trap, and then it was difficult first to understand what has happened and what would have been where could have been the consequences. So we started by doing, like trying to contact Instagram. It was like a cyberspace, very dark, because like fill in the form and then you get back, and then so it was complicated. Then we couldn't get in contact with anyone, and then internally we had the discussion of what to do. We let our president and our board know, and then we contacted the members and the followers on Instagram to let them know what had happened. And our fear was that someone else would have got tricked the way we did, because it did look very, very, very similar. And I mean, many of you might not know UICC, but UICC is very well known global health arena. We have different partners in the health sector. So we were, and I want to believe that we're also very credible and a strong organization, very well operated. And our fear was that someone would ask them for money, or for that on our behalf they would be asking for money or for something else. So we communicated with our contacts, with our members, and then with that we also announced it on the website, and it was difficult to not create a panic, because we also don't want to show that the organization is not well run and we're not in control of what we're doing, and then also how to make sure that people were informed. So that's what we did, and then we found a solution. Then we got in contact with CyberPeace Institute. They guide us on how to approach the problem. And then since then, we've been working with them on different actions that we could take, and see it as a whole operational concern that organizations could have. So there is a happy ending, because we recovered the account and no one was asked for any money or anything. So it took us a couple of weeks to recover the contacts, and then since then we've worked as an organization on how to create that awareness, how to train staff, how to have the right reflexes on how to approach these things. And as you say at the beginning, it's not only an IT concern, because in this case, in our case, the IT is outsourced and the social media is managed by the marketing department. So it was a little bit of a gray zone. And it's true, many of the actions that we're putting in place, they're related to IT, but many others are also related as the organization. So yeah, that's the story.
Thank you so much, Maria Barbara. That's perfect. And I think one thing that just to highlight a point you raised earlier on, about how the email that was received, it seemed so like something that could be from Instagram, and I think that's something that really struck Nonso and I about what happened, was that it was something which could have happened to anyone. The staff member was very experienced, and just because it looked so genuine and was so convincing, if you weren't paying the closest attention, it was really easy to just be like, oh yeah, this is this is a normal, like, everyday action that they're well, not quite every day, but every week or so, action that they maybe have to take as part of their job. And so it was sort of a very kind of easy trap, as it were, to fall into.
Yes, and actually, I mean, as I said, we've got these emails from like people that have died and have inherited things, and plenty of typos, plenty of things that we make us think this is not real. But in that specific one, they have used the logos, the colors, the fonts, and they did look very similar. And anyone, but we did believe that it was the right thing, the real thing. So yeah, and it was, we're all professional, knowledgeable, intelligent people, and we got tricked, and it is, yeah. And then when we're trying to find solutions, we don't want to blame either, but we want to create that awareness, and we also have to disclose what happened. And then to disclose what happened, you put yourself in an awkward situation, because it shouldn't happen. But so it's a little bit of a cycle where you enter, but that you have to address.
Thank you. And I'm seeing a question in the chat which actually flows quite nicely now, so perhaps we can answer it. So Victoria is asking, was it Instagram who solved the issue? You mentioned that communication with them was difficult, and how are you able to find the proper procedure to follow?
Yeah. No, it wasn't Instagram directly. Well, when we announced the incident, some connections that the communications team had, they had a personal contact through Facebook, through Meta, and Meta is also the owner of Instagram. So that's how we recover it. But it wasn't Instagram responding directly. We had to go through other channels. So we wouldn't known the way, because it was a completely different way, because we had a problem with Instagram, and our first reflex was to go straight to Instagram, but it didn't work like that. So we had to go other ways, and then we finally got it recovered. But it was through connections.
Thanks for sharing that. And then perhaps just reflecting on the everything that happened. We'd love to hear what you learned and what changes you've made since. What are your key takeaways?
Yeah, we learned lots. Well, we met the CyberPeace Institute, which is a really good partner to have in these times. We learned also that we needed to create the awareness between ourselves, and to believe that this could happen to anyone, to us, to an organization, even if it's well run, it could happen. We learned to have a plan on how to communicate it, and who to go to. Like crisis, they always create that stress, and then sometimes we don't know what to do. So we kind of, like, okay, if something happens like that, you contact this, you contact that. So that is helpful also, because it reassures also the staff that the organization thinks about those things. And then yeah, also to be careful and to not believe everything that we received, and especially not sharing personal information, because that was the big mistake, sharing personal information.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria Barbara, for that rich reflection and being able to, I guess, connect with each of us in the way you shared it back. Thanks a lot. Very appreciated. I'd like to pull in Alexandru here a bit. And perhaps maybe if you could start by telling us how many of these types of phishing attacks that target, social media accounts do we have in a year, or do you come across? Like, if one was going to estimate, how often are these things happening?
Thank you, Nonso. Well, it's a bit tricky to give you a precise number, but I would say that maybe half of, let's say, maybe 5 out of 10 attacks might end up being on social media, and targeting social media handles accounts, and it renders them very difficult, to solve because of this communication problem between customers and actual big tech companies like Meta, Google, and the sort. However, it's also quite subjective, because sometimes like it was also the context, like the context when they deployed this copyright attack was it worked, it just triggered then the reaction on the other side. So it really depends.
And just to say that the UICC case ended on a good note. What are the chances, right, that that these incidents have like real life consequences, or that they don't? What's that ratio? Another tough one, I guess. But
no, I mean, it really depends. I mean, you see, it's really I mean, for me, it's really the person who actually clicked and who provided the information, how they're going to feel, what's going on through their mind. I mean, and it's very important to create a no blame culture, to actually be able to provide them with support, because I mean, at least for us at the CyberPeace Institute, what's the most important is the human behind the technology. The technology itself as well, it's super important, but where you can see quite serious damage is then on the person, and its professional, personal level, the confidence in itself, and the way then they are going to actually tackle with this, and the confidence they are going to have the next time when they're going to get an email, oh, is this really the actual thing, So I would say it's on a very human level, and that's where we should actually really focus on creating this no blame culture, awareness, and common understanding of these challenges, and also the fact that NGOs, as they became more and more digitalized in the past 3 years, they did start to report more and more cyber attacks. Now it's not like NGOs before didn't actually use computers, but since the current context and everything requires them to move online to continue their operations, it's also the right moment for cyber criminals to sort of take advantage of this. But yeah, I hope this answers it.
Yeah, it did help.
Sorry, Nonso, if I could interrupt, just
Please
to
do.
add of what Alexandru said. Sometimes, in my experience, sometimes regarding the number of attacks, in my experience, sometimes we don't even recognize that it could have been an attack, and some organizations are not even willing to accept that it was an attack for many reasons. We're not here to judge, but it is a difficult, vulnerable place to accept that things like that happen.
Thank you, Maria. And Maria, you have another question in the chat from the audience. It says, what were the measures, if any, that were taken in-house towards social media accounts while the account was hijacked and after it was recovered?
Yeah, we did a few things. That was my colleague from communications, the head of communication. She put a little bit of order in the house with passwords and two-factor authentication. That one. So she implemented that for her team, and to make sure also that the phones used are managed well, because it just happened that I use my phone, no, I use the other one. So we put a little bit of order on the social media accounts, and that's from the social media accounts. And that, as an organization, we did a security assessment with the institute, and give us a little bit of rating where we are. But then we discuss also with them and internally what are our priorities, because our resources are limited, and there's certain things that we don't need to do, but there are others that are more important. We did have the training for the staff. That for us was critical. Then we do have we're transferring into the two-factor authentication. And then we also looking into the password management, because you should, typical, I mean, I don't know if it happens, but here, like we have like all the passwords in a piece of paper, and then we could, yeah, and then, oh yeah, no one is gonna use them. So we're trying to look into that, also into that, and then yeah, I think those are the most important ones, and I think that the most important action is that, you know, we learned the hard way that it could happen to us, and that it did happen.
Yeah, thanks, Maria Barbara. And I think you did share a few more that are documented in the case study.
Yeah.
Just for everyone's reference. And I would bounce back to you, Alexandru. You were hitting on a point around encouraging a no blame culture, and it does sound like one of the sort of recommendations that has been very crucial for dealing with this. Can you share a bit more of some of those recommendations that you offered to UICC in this instance, but also if there are others which quite didn't apply to UICC, but like great recommendations that organizations can look to doing in instances like this? Please share. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nonso. So, I mean, Maria Barbara actually covered quite a few of the points that we actually recommended, starting with changing the passwords for all the other social media accounts that were associated with the email that got hacked, but also being aware that the password that got actually leaked is not used into any other platform. What we also recommended was to activate 2FA or MFA across the key platforms that they're using, especially social media, including also the implementation of a password manager that's going to then help then share the password. For example, let's say tomorrow they're going to have a new intern. Rather than sending that password through an email or through Teams, they can just easily share it through the password manager directly to the intern, especially if it's a shared account, and it facilitates things a lot by really, really very much. And also what we recommended is to share a copy of the phishing email or a screenshot so that we can then send it to experts to do a bit of forensics, to actually investigate a bit what happened there, maybe discover an IP, maybe find some traces to see if we can find anybody who might have been accountable. What we do have to mention is that usually also cyber attacks against NGOs is like sometimes going fishing with phishing, but I know it sounds funny, but it's like you're just throwing the net and then you see in the end who is going to bite as well. So in some cases, it might be very difficult to actually then identify who launched the attack, but it's always good if you have that piece of information to share it to those organizations that can actually do forensics and investigations. Now, another recommendation was to communicate openly about the incident, which they've already done excellently even before, to involve all the stakeholders relevant stakeholders that were involved with the UICC and the World Cancer Day. And also, Maria Barbara mentioned it really, really well earlier, to be transparent with the community of members, but also with the public in general, in case maybe the attackers have reached out to them for any kind of strange demands to get money for them or other additional information and so on. Usually, you see these attacks, and again, Maria Barbara underlined it super well earlier, you cannot really put a point on them. In many cases, they go unnoticed, they really go under the radar until actually the attacker, the cyber criminal, actually manifests themselves with that message they got through WhatsApp regarding the ransom, the money that they were asked, the $10,000. Overall, again, going back to the no blame culture, they had it from the very beginning, and it was very easy to actually, you can see that it's a very supportive and excellent, work environment to be and to support their colleague despite the actual incident. And I think this is something that we should push out through all CSOs in general.
Thank you, Alexandru. That was a really clear explanation. And just a reminder that a lot of these recommendations are, all of them actually, are in the case studies and the guidance that the Solidarity Action Network launched together with the CyberPeace Institute, the cybersecurity guidance that was launched last year.
So here are the 4 new cases being launched today. as we just reviewed the first case closely with Maria Barbara, we will now talk through the remaining 3 cases, and then go on to share some of our key observations, challenges, lessons learned, and we would conclude with the opportunity areas. And so this case 2 involves Transparency International, which is a global movement working to end injustice of corruption. In 2019, Transparency International experienced a sustained and sophisticated phishing attack, which was detected through a sharp increase in failed attempts to log into the organization's email accounts. And over a 6-week period, the 5-person IT team at the Secretariat monitored and responded to the persistent efforts to breach the organization's systems.
The third case was experienced by a medium-sized civil society organization working in the humanitarian sector. And in 2021, they were targeted by a brute force attack through their webmail. So in other words, their system was bombarded with incorrect logins as the cyber attackers tried to decode login information to attack their system. So it's sort of like a trial and error way to break into email accounts. This was then followed by targeted phishing emails on the same day. So they had a sort of a full working day of really intense attacks, which they managed to avert with support from an external cybersecurity company and management and staff. And then a few weeks, it took a few weeks after the incident to really kind of manage the aftermath of the attack.
In the fourth and final case, this is another global nonprofit organization that operates local chapter in countries and has regional offices as well. In September 2021, they were also attacked by a hacker group to extort a ransom. But the team mobilized internally, pulling experts together, and got additional help from a cyber insurance provider to both negotiate with the attackers, counter the threat, and restore the organization's data.
We're going to move on now to sharing some key observations. So these were commonalities that we saw across the case studies. And the first one really, is that any organization can face a cyber attack. It doesn't matter how strong an organization's cybersecurity is, or even the fact that your organization is a civil society organization. It is a purpose-driven, not-for-profit organization. That doesn't matter. Any organization can become the target of an attack. And so what that indicated to us is that we therefore really need to normalize conversations such as this about cybersecurity risks, which really help to strengthen organizations' prevention and response. One commonality across the organizations we spoke to was that the attacks were more sophisticated than they expected. So for instance, phishing emails use the writing style of someone within the organization, or phishing links led to a web page with a visual experience that a user might expect. So which sort of, made it quite tricky to realize that this wasn't genuine. Thirdly, we noticed that while there was a varying amount of time for attacks, so attacks could last from a few hours to several weeks, for the teams responding, who were oftentimes IT staff, it really felt like firefighting. So those kind of frontline responders, it was very intense. And then even after an attack had ended, teams would spend several weeks on forensic analysis to better understand the cyber attack and how their organization's data and systems may have been compromised. For all the organizations involved, or all the organizations that we spoke to, the attacks underscore the importance of the measures that staff members have been advised to take and made them more aware of the actions that they should take. And this lasted quite some time after a cybersecurity incident. Senior management were also more cognizant of the importance of cybersecurity, which went from being something quite abstract to something far more concrete and real after an attack.
Thanks, Sacha. And we would just quickly run you through some of the challenges that we surfaced through this work. And first one, maybe quite obvious, is that ICSO resources tend to be focused on programmatic work rather than operations like IT and cybersecurity. And this leaves a gap. It's also that it's expensive to allocate funds or resources to cybersecurity, considering how small sometimes the working budget that ICSOs have can be. The other challenge that we observed, at least in this cases that we had looked at, is that ICSOs were inexperienced, right? Facing such a threat for the first time made it difficult nonetheless. And this sort of often left them with some heightened sense of uncertainty throughout that experience. The third common challenge that we observed was that, being in this, it's closely related to the unsettling feeling, right? Is that even after the attacks ended, people still didn't know if they had all the answers, if this was it, if there was more to come. It's some sort of that we are not sure, but we're here and we're just waiting. That sense of unsettlement sort of lingers for a bit longer than maybe should be. The fourth common challenge is that the day-to-day tasks do not go away because organizations or a team is responding to an attack. They still ultimately have to do, the daily responsibilities that they have. And sometimes the attacks can actually, double or triple the level of effort that these team members or colleagues would normally have to bring to their work. The final challenge was really around the communication, right? Deciding what to communicate. And this is quite a tough and complex one to navigate, because on the one hand, the team who is at the forefront do not want to leave colleagues troubled or with not enough information to, feel comfortable. But at the same time, they also had to deal with the fact that they didn't want to be offering or passing out too much information, not knowing how much exposure that they were currently dealing with. So being able to strike a good balance was something that was tricky for them to deal with. And then there were questions as to whether to communicate, when to communicate, who to communicate. Do you want to take this communication outside of the organization, at what time, and so on and so forth.
We also identified about 4 lessons learned. The first of which was that, sorry, do you mind going to the next slide, Nonso? The first of which is that after a cybersecurity attack happened, organizations then planned for better incident response for next time. So that could be something like developing a disaster recovery plan or identifying other measures they could take to be better prepared in the future. Secondly, in the aftermath of an incident, that normally triggered a review of current measures. And then organizations would take steps like ensuring that multi-factor authentication was implemented, updating systems, and ensuring regular system maintenance was completed. Thirdly, one lesson learned was that a cybersecurity incident can be a really vulnerable time, and staff responding can feel under a lot of pressure and stress. IT teams might be worried about their colleagues' reactions. but staying calm really helped to manage that response better. And one thing that came out of the case studies was that oftentimes colleagues' reactions were much more appreciative, understanding, and positive than they might have expected. Finally, and this really was a huge learning for a lot of organizations, is that external help played a really significant role. And whether that's seeking cybersecurity expertise during an incident to respond to it, or other kinds of support, such as training staff afterwards, just that external help was really, really key. And being able to identify that and know where to go for that help immediately when an attack happens was really important.
And we also did identify a couple of opportunity areas. And the idea around the opportunity areas is that these are not necessarily they're like, assume them as non-technical steps that you can take right away to better your position with preparedness in the face of cyber attack. And the first sort of opportunity area that we see is that there is value in organizations taking time to assess their cybersecurity readiness. And the idea here is that it might be there is value in you just doing that, quick audits or taking stock of what you have that might be useful in the face of an attack. And then the second point here is that it might also be worthwhile to look into response mechanisms for other incidents. So you have responded to other kinds of crises, other kinds of emergencies. What from those responses that you've done might be valuable in responding to a cyber attack? So doing that sort of assessment of the organization.
A second sort of core area is around sharing the responsibility of cybersecurity. So there are 3 ways that you can approach this. The first is to consider how you might encourage staff across the organization to think proactively about cybersecurity. So for instance, this could be gamifying exercises and training, such as periodically sending out fake phishing emails, and then sharing the click-through score with all staff across the organization. You might also want to think about ways that cybersecurity can be embedded in organizational processes, training, and resources. Secondly, you might want to think about increasing management's awareness of cybersecurity challenges, potential tools, and ways to help protect your organization. So if they have a greater understanding of some of the challenges and some of the ways that you can prevent attacks, it might actually help you to secure more resources. And thirdly, is to advocate with donors for more resources to improve your organization's cybersecurity. One thing that we heard was that oftentimes organizations have small budgets devoted to cybersecurity, but that actually in the aftermath of an attack, that budget and the resources dedicated towards cybersecurity increased because there was this increased understanding of how important cybersecurity is.
And lastly, we have the opportunity area where there is value in pre-identifying cybersecurity support and invest in some of those relationships. The first element of this is among peers. I think the sense that we've gotten so far is that there is, which is no judgment at all, there might be a sense of secrecy that sort of comes with facing cyber attacks or dealing with cyber attacks. But the value of joining peer networks or finding peer networks that you can connect with, besides the learning and exchange opportunity that it provides, is that sometimes these cyber attacks are kind of, happening simultaneously. They're attackers might be reaching out to multiple organizations at the same time, and it might be useful to know that, you know, some of your peers are dealing with this, and, you know, you can exchange ways of responding. The second thing you could also do is look out for organizations that are providing support and advice as an initial touch point that might get you to learn more about perhaps, you know, more technical support types or specialist support types that you might need. The third thing in this area is to actually go further and establish some of those expert contacts and just have them, you know, at the back of your pocket, just in case you might need them. Sort of see opportunities for you to set up some of those arrangements in case there's an incident. And lastly, you might want to consider taking advantage of cyber insurance for your organization. And I'm sure you can learn more about cyber insurance in the report.